I'm gonna try not to screw this up too bad. Before I get started, I just want to say but,
Excuse me 1 minute. I'm sorry. Before
yeah,
you,
go ahead.
let me put this just so I can record you. Thanks.
All right. So let's say a prayer real quick. God, I offer myself to thee to do with me and build with me as you will. Relieve me of the bondage of self so that I may better serve you and those you would have me help. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those that I would help of your power, your love, and your way of life. Amen. Okay, we'll see. I'll try to go in chronological order, but once I get started, we'll go wherever it goes because I don't take notes really. I've got books up here if I need to. I probably won't even use them. I find I screw it up more often than not if I try to figure out what I'm going to say instead of letting God just take whatever I got and have it come out however it does. So I'm just as interested in finding out what I'm going to say as y'all are. So I was born in Monroe, Louisiana in 1985. I'm 39 years old, and I'm a recovered alcoholic, along with other things. I'm a husband to a wife that's way too good for me. We've been married for 15 years now, and we dated for a while before that, so we've been together a long time. She stuck around through all the stuff y'all are going to hear, so she's a saint. I'm also daddy to 3 children, 2 beautiful little girls, 10 and 7, and a boy that's definitely going to be trouble, like that's about 3, who takes way too much after I do. His main goal in life is to make his sisters and his mama laugh and to do whatever I happen to be doing at the moment. That's his 2 big things. So I'm a son, I'm a grandson, I'm a brother, I'm a stepbrother, so a lot of different things. But the reason I start with saying I'm a recovered alcoholic, because that's the thing that would have ruined all the rest of them. If I wasn't a recovered alcoholic, I wouldn't be any of those things, or I wouldn't care to tell anybody about it, because I wouldn't probably be here. So I was born in Monroe, and every 5 years or so we moved. No, I wasn't in the military, but my dad, for his job, and we would move about every 5 years. So when I was 5, we moved to DeRidder, Louisiana. When I was 10, we moved back to West Monroe. And then when I was 15, we moved to New Orleans. And look, every spot we were in probably was the ideal situation for the age I happened to be at, actually. Still doesn't remove the needing to meet new people, and I developed a big concern with what other people thought about me and being accepted. When I was from 5 to 10, we lived right next to a golf course, and I got to run around and play golf, and that was all great. When I was 10, we moved somewhere where sports was the biggest thing, and I like sports. So there was good things and ways for me to join and be accepted, but it was a big deal for me, is finding out what you wanted and figuring out how to be that so I could get what I wanted from you, which was acceptance and applause a lot of times. So the first time I drank was when I was about 13 years old in West Monroe, and somebody had taken a bottle of vodka, Taka vodka, from parents' bar and brought it out to the woods, and we all passed it around. And I don't remember much after the second time it went around. The next thing I remembered, for the most part, was waking up at like 6 in the morning, freezing cold, with probably every bodily excrement that the body can produce on me. Terrible headache, felt bad, but the first thing that popped in my mind is, when can we do this again? Which makes no sense. I should have known at that point. So I blacked out the first time I drank, and I did remember that after I took that first drink, that I didn't care what you thought about me anymore. I wasn't scared of trying to convince you that I was who you wanted me to be, and I was okay with being me. The fear went away. Didn't know that at the time, but that's what I chased for the next 20 years, is the effect that I got from alcohol. And our big book tells us that we drank essentially because of the effect. The effect for me was being okay wherever I was at with whoever I was with, not worried about 8 billion things and what happened yesterday or 5 minutes ago or 10 years from now, what's going to happen. It gave me essentially the closest thing to peace that I could find. So moving forward, we moved to New Orleans when I was 15. Again, from a 15-year-old's perspective, that's great. Looking back at the point we moved, I wasn't real happy because I was in 9th grade at a high school in West Monroe that had everything I wanted. I played football and baseball and powerlifting, and we won every state championship in all 3 of the categories the year out before I moved. And I was getting ready to be a part of all those teams the next year. So, and I was a North Louisiana, boy that had been in public school his whole life, right? And I'm found out not only we moved to New Orleans, but I get to go to an all-boys Catholic school as a North Louisiana redneck Baptist that's been in co-ed public school his whole life. Wasn't on the top of my list, right? Never heard of that school before, didn't know anything about Catholics, didn't know anything about all-boys schools. It was like uniforms, we had to dress like a Marine every day. It did. There we go. Yeah, no, look, and again, sports was big with me, and that did allow me, when I got to New Orleans, to fit in a lot easier than maybe some other folks would be. But over the years, I'd gotten really good at that whole fear. Look, fear can drive you to do a lot of things. I was fairly intelligent, and I got really good at figuring out what you wanted and who I needed to be for you to accept me and want to be with me and hang out and how to get applause and everything else. And some people call it social skills, and it was exhausting, but I was really good at it. And when I drank, I wasn't concerned about that. And look, if you want to drink as a 15-year-old, there wasn't anywhere else to be in the world that was easier or better than New Orleans. Pretty much every weekend and it wasn't me inventing it. All my friends that I hooked up with, we'd be at bars, or we'd go drink at somebody's house, or we'd do that, or we'd do this. And I always drank excessively. I didn't stop drinking until I had to. And for me, the progression on my alcoholism was never how much I drank. I drank the same way since the first time I drank. It was what I was willing to sacrifice in order to keep doing it or to do it again. And when I was at that age, there were still things that were really important to me that would mitigate to some degree how often I did that, like football and sports and other things. So it progressed, but it didn't get to the point where it would affect in the things I really cared about until probably after high school. I mean, I got in all kind of trouble, drive drunk, things like that, but it wasn't anything serious. I didn't kill anybody. I didn't go to jail. I didn't do anything like that, but it progressed. And when I graduated high school and went to college, I didn't play sports anymore. It was one less thing to keep me from drinking. School was never an issue for me in high school, and I made it all the way through the first 2 semesters or first year of college without having to attend class. I could show up for the tests, and I made A's and B's, and I got to drink the rest of the time. It turns out college gets harder in your second year, and you can't really pass without going to class. So I pretty much was a full-time drinker at that point. And same thing. If somebody said drink, I was all about it, and we can start whenever you want, and we'll stop when I can't remember or I can't drink anymore. And went through that part of my life. My wife was there the whole way, or my now wife, my girlfriend at the time. And she saw it. I mean, look, I was not doing what I was supposed to do. And look, there's a lot of stories that make you cry. There's some that make you laugh. I'll tell you this one just to give you a qualification that's somewhere in the middle. But one morning I woke up at my girlfriend's condo, who's now my wife, and with a hangover. We're not drinking the night before. And I go downstairs, getting ready to leave, go back to my house, and it was in a big parking lot at a condo. And I went everywhere in that parking lot, and I couldn't find my truck. I don't know where it was. Went back in, ended up having to drive down to New Orleans or get a ride to New Orleans to pick up an extra vehicle that we weren't using, somebody in the family. And I drove around. 2 weeks later, I'm like, I don't know, I'm just going to report it stolen. So I reported my truck stolen. And about a week or so after that, one of my buddies calls me and said, hey, is that your truck at McDonald's on the way to campus? And I said, I don't know, I'll go look. And yes, sure enough, my truck had been sitting in McDonald's parking lot on the way to class for 2 or 3 weeks. And I apparently had decided not to drive from McDonald's. I drove to McDonald's, I guess, and then I walked to my girlfriend's condo, and I went back to her. I said, hey, did I show up with anything, when I got? She's like, yeah, you had some McDonald's. I'm like, yeah, that wouldn't have been pertinent information when I was looking for my truck. So anyways, that's the first part of the story. So 2 years later, I got my truck back, great. About 2 years later, I'm living in New Orleans, and what else? I'm drinking at a buddy's house off of Cleary in Metairie, and about 2 a.m, and I had work the next day, and so I pull, his house is like 2 turns off of Cleary. I get to Cleary, turn on to Cleary, and apparently decide that, hey, I probably shouldn't drive, I'm too drunk. So I'm like, I'm gonna pull over, sleep it off, and then I'll drive to work. And so I do that, pull over, take the keys out of the ignition, put them wherever, and a few minutes later, cops tapping on the window after I fell asleep, and I wake up, and he's like, can you get out of the car? I said, yeah. And he's like, put your hands on the side of the car, and he starts patting me down. I look back, the partner's got his hand on his pistol and looking at me like they're, trying to be careful, and I'm not that threatening, and, they get done, and finally, like, sir, do you know that you're driving a stolen vehicle? I said, it's my vehicle. I said, I had reported it stolen, I just didn't unreport it stolen. But and I had not pulled all the way out of Cleary either. So they got about 3 phone calls that there was a truck in the middle of Cleary with somebody asleep in it. So I got taken to jail that night. But moving forward, I was 25, and me and my wife were engaged to be married. And the first time I tried to stop drinking, or was told I needed to stop drinking completely, was we had a wedding to go to downtown on Saturday, and I had been up for 2 days straight before that, all the way up until the wedding, and I was even late for the wedding. And I show up drunk, how you would expect, 2 days of not sleeping and everything you do to do that, and made a fool of myself and everybody else. I don't remember the wedding. It was at the Montleone. It's a nice wedding. And she told me, if you don't quit drinking, we ain't get married. So I said, all right. I went to an AA meeting or 2, decided, okay, and I stopped drinking. I don't think I ever intended on stopping forever, but I did stop, and I drank on my bachelor party though, so I spent the next 8 years drinking without her knowing about it, okay? Something that she told me that you needed to stop or we're not getting married, that I'd continue to do for 8 years behind her back. My family didn't know either. I drank with my friends, and it progressed though. It was instances for a little while, and then it got to where I would drink after work or at work, working late, so I could get more done. But any excuse, any reason I could come up with to where it was complete reliance on that. And then that came out, and then the whole deal again, like, you need to stop, or we're going to get divorced. I mean, there was no future. And at that point, I was convinced. Before that, I wanted to keep drinking. I didn't think I had a problem. Then I thought I had a problem, but I still wanted to drink. At that point, I knew I had a problem, and I wanted to stop. I started going to AA meetings, reading big books. My dad's a 40-something year recovered alcoholic. I've never seen him drink. So I had all the information that you could want and all the people you want to talk to about it and everything else. And I spent 2 years trying to use all that information and going to meetings to get myself sober. And it didn't work. I couldn't quit drinking. I could go for a little while, and then out of nowhere something would happen and I would get drunk again. And eventually, my wife, even seeing me trying to do what I need to do to get sober, January 13th of 2020, I left the house to go downtown and hang out before the LSU game with some friends. She was going to go with me. At the last moment, she couldn't. I had no intention of drinking, and that was probably about noon, and I was supposed to come back to watch the game at her house with her parents, and the last she saw or heard of me was when I left the house. I was drunk, lost my phone, couldn't get in touch with me. I finally got back home at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. And for me, that was the point at which I finally gave up and surrendered. I slept in the other room not to wake her up. But even while I'm doing it, I'm knowing that it's something I don't want to do, and I don't know what to do because I don't want to do it anymore, and it keeps happening, and I keep drinking, and I keep hurting everybody I care about. And that night before I went to sleep, I finally surrendered. I finally did the first step that it's in Alcoholics Anonymous. I surrendered. I said, God, I don't care what you do with me. I said, if you can fix me, fix me. I said, I ain't got an idea how to do it, but whatever you do, you have to do something to keep me from hurting the people I care about. I said, get rid of me, remove me, get rid of this obsession. I don't care what you do, but I don't want to keep hurting the people I care about. I had 2 kids. My 2 daughters were born at the time. So God answered my prayer, and the next morning I was asked not to live in my house anymore. So my wife kicked me out. We don't always get the answers we think we want, but we get the right ones. So my dad was kind enough to let me live at his house, and I went to work and went to AA meetings. That was my life. I didn't see my wife and kids for a few months, and went to meetings every day and all day. But the first thing I did was I went and found somebody in the program and got a sponsor who went through the big book with me. And the craziest thing, even those 2 years when I could not drink for a minute before I finally got sober, I still wanted to. It was still there. I had to fight it. I had to say, it was hard. After that night, it wasn't. I haven't wanted to drink since. It's not something I even think about. It's not it's not a fight. I'm indifferent. I don't care. It's around. It doesn't affect me at all, and that ain't got nothing to do with me. I don't believe that would be the case, consider if I didn't continue to do what was suggested, which is find somebody else who's dealt with this, who's got a happy life that he likes and has some spirituality. But once I did that and I kept making progress, it's been like that. It's still like that today. I haven't wanted to drink since that night. And the things that I figured out as I went through the program, so one, I thought I did step 1, 2, and 3 in those 2 years, and I hadn't. I admitted that I was powerless over alcohol. I got that part. The part about my life being unmanageable, I didn't think so. I had a house, I had a wife, I had kids, I had a job. I thought I did well. I thought I had it, but that was the whole deal. My life essentially is what I think and how I feel about it. And I had no shot at managing either one of those. That's why I used alcohol. The effect I got was it removed my fear. It made me okay. I had some peace. I didn't have peace until I would take a drink. And there's only so long a human being can go without having some peace. So I finally accepted the fact that my life, i.e. what I think and how I feel about it, is unmanageable. It moves too fast. I could be standing up here talking to y'all and be 5 years in the past, 10 years in the future, feel great, feel terrible. all in the blink of an eye and be back here with y'all. I have no chance, and you know what, it being anywhere close to being able to control that. But once I surrendered and accepted that part, God can. He does. He's faster than all that. But I got to be in the moment to be able to have access to that. And I was never able to be in the moment. I couldn't be right here with y'all if I wanted to, not without God's help. And that was one of the first things he did for me. I was sitting in a meeting and I said, God, help me be right here, right now. And it's like somebody turned the lights on and the music up or the sound up. I could hear, I could see, I could listen, I could get it. And there's a million other things he did for me. We got to step 2, came to believe. I never had an issue with God. Grew up with him. Grandparents took me to church. My grandpa was a pastor. Never had any conflict against God. You know, I didn't have to go through any of that. I think I believed in God my whole life. But for me, there was a distinction that I heard, and it makes sense. It's my experience, is there's a difference between belief and faith. For me, belief is based on a recommendation from a trusted source. My grandparents, I trusted them. We use the same principle in AA and 12-step programs. That guy looks happy, and if I believe he used to drink like I used to drink, and he's happy and not drinking right now, and he says that he's got somebody called God that he prays to, and that's what helped him, well, if I believe that guy, then maybe I should do something similar. Faith for me comes, and I'd skipped this part, or never did it, which is faith only comes from firsthand knowledge from me, a firsthand experience. So if I believe that God can, based on a recommendation, I don't ever have faith until I take that belief and use it and rely on it and get that experience. And that's what happened for me, is I started relying on God. Hey, God, can you do this for me? I can't do it. There's a million other things I can't do too, but start small. And they use the word spiritual experiences in these books. For me, that's what it is. It's when God starts doing stuff for me that I can't do for myself. But until I ask him to and then rely on him to do it, I don't ever get to experience that. But I did, and that's where faith for me comes in. That's firsthand experience. I don't have to guess. I don't have to have blind faith. I don't think I could. I got to firsthand experience, and I have a million times beyond that, because every day I wake up with the same fear and desperation. And I get to ask God to take it away from me, and he does. So I couldn't get this program because I was obsessed with understanding and controlling everything beforehand. I couldn't get enough knowledge and understanding to do it. And once I finally accepted, surrendered, and allowed God to be in charge through the 3rd step, I finally got to understand that for this to work, for God to work, I don't have to understand it. I don't. I just have to do it. I have to rely on it. And I get to experience the results. And generally, once that happens, I get understanding on the back end. I don't get the understanding on the front end. That's just not how it works. Once I put my trust in God and rely on him, the great news is once I get to experience the effects of being able to do things that I couldn't do on my own, then I get the understanding. Because my job at that point is to help somebody else. And for me to help somebody else, I do need to understand. I don't need to understand for it to help me at all. In fact, that actually gets in my way. So we got to the 4th step, and that's where, we get to write down all the stuff that we did wrong and everybody's scared of and everything else. And that's why they're in order. The 3rd step's required, because if I could do that on my own, I'd have done it already. I can't, because I'm scared to death of looking at all that stuff. My best defense mechanism was forgetting and hiding and never thinking about it again. And I got really good at it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. Because sometimes I'd wish I was just an asshole and didn't care about things in the morning, because I'm like, if I just didn't care and was, a really bad guy, then this wouldn't affect me. But I felt terrible, not from drinking, from the things I did while I was drinking. They weren't me. It's not what I believed in. And you want to destroy yourself real quickly, then do things that don't line up with what you believe in and your principles. And I did that. And that's what drinking made me do too. And that is the quickest way down a hole, is to do things that violate what you believe in and your principles. And so I went through the 4-step, and this is, look, the 12 steps for me, and this isn't just me. The book says that this book, the object of this book on page 45, Alcoholics Anonymous, the big book, is for you to find a power that's greater than yourself that will solve your problem. That is if anybody asks you what it is, that is the essential purpose of a 12-step program in the big book, which is where it comes from, is to find a power greater than me which will solve my problem. And that was my experience. So once I could actually look at the things I had done, I could follow those, and the whole point is to find the root of what caused me to do them. And it was simple when I got to the end of it. Self-centered fear caused all my problems. It still does. The biggest thing that God does for me is remove my self-centered fear. He helps me not think about me, and he helps me not be consumed by what might happen to me, what I might get, what I might lose, what I've got that I might be taken away. And I get some relief, some peace at that point. And then I get to ask him to remove them from me. This whole purpose was, all the 12 steps to me were helping me develop a relationship with God and to rely on that relationship. And that's what I have to do every morning. The 3rd step, my sponsor made me get down on my knees and ask and pray that prayer that I prayed before I started here. And me getting on my knees wasn't for God, it was for me. I have to put myself in proper perspective. Having kids helps too. Essentially I'm God to my 3-year-old. My job is to be as good of an example of God as possible, and then when he gets old enough, hand him off. But it's crazy. I do believe that, and the Father is the same relationship, and kids teach me all kind of stuff I didn't know before. But we had to do amends. That was a huge deal. The biggest amends that I found out that I needed to make that I didn't know about before I probably started this program was that the peace that I'd stolen from people. It wasn't money. Look, there was all the things that would come along with everything that I did. But the biggest thing I took from people, and I didn't realize it because I didn't have it, but at that point I had gotten some peace. God had taken away my fears and my insecurities and my concern to where I could be okay with being me without some other kind of substance or help, which made me realize that's what I stole from my wife and my parents and everybody that knew me, was peace of mind. And it was the most important thing in my life now, because I finally got it. And like, this is what this is. The effect that I used to get from alcohol, I get from my relationship with God. It makes me be okay with being me wherever I'm at, no matter what's going on, no matter what happens to me, I'm okay. And I don't get the consequences of, handcuffs and being kicked out of my house. It just keeps making my life better and better. So there's a million different ways for me to try to handle what I think and how I feel about it. And people use all of them. And I'd be just as likely to go from one to the next, to the next, to the next. I don't care if it's drinking or gambling or drugs or eating or my wife or working out or running. People use whatever's available to them. But look, all that stuff's not infinite. I had to find something that no matter where I'm at, no matter what I'm doing, no matter how old I am or whether I'm on the moon or here, that can solve that problem for me. Otherwise, I'm going to find something else, and it's not going to be the slow acting kind. I need relief now. Like I said, I get the experience every morning of that. So it works, and it did work, and it continues to work today. The 11th and 12th step, thank y'all for being here and letting me talk. I hope somebody does get something out of it, but this is as much for me as anybody else. This is what I have to do, because I get peace, at least my understanding of when I have peace, And this was one of my first hopes in the program, when I saw other people talking about all the things that they had done in front of other people and not trying to hide it or be ashamed of it, and then sticking around long enough to see some of those things that they said actually help somebody else. And I can stand here before you with all the things that I've done and everything I've been through and tell you honestly, I haven't had a bad experience in my life. And the reason is because my experiences are neither good nor bad as far as God's concerned. As soon as I make every experience I've ever had available to Him for the benefit of somebody else, they're all good. Because I don't care what it was. If somebody else has gone through it and I'm willing to share that when I'm made aware of it, then that experience at that point, God just made it good. And that's when I receive peace. When I'm willing to share all of my experiences, when relevant, for the benefit of somebody else, I have peace because I don't feel shame or guilt or remorse about anything. All that stuff pulls me out of right here, right now. And the only place I have access to God is in this moment. God may have access to everything and everywhere and anytime and whatever. I don't. The only chance I got at accessing God is right here, right now. As soon as I get into the future and the past, I can't find Him. And I used to live in the future and the past. And there ain't a door to God in the future and the past for me. The only way I get to Him is right here, right now. And He always answers. But I got to be right here, right now. And that's a miracle for me. All the things I used to hide and run away from and carry around every day for 30-something years. Now it's still with me, but I ain't hauling it and I ain't hiding it. It's available if somebody comes up that needs it. And that's the beautiful thing, is if, as long as I do that, I still have peace. So for me, God is love. I think it was important for me. Like I said, I never had an issue with God. I grew up with Him, Baptist. I could read you out of the Bible left and right, and it's all good. When I had to identify God for me, it was God is love in the Bible, and in Corinthians, it tells me what love is. That's what God is to me. And He's way more than that, but I have no chance of understanding something that's way more powerful than me. So the best I can do is identify what it is I do understand about it and try to live my life that way. And as long as I do, I can check that because He helps me do the things that are in there. He's not going to help me do stuff that doesn't make sense, that He doesn't like. And He gives me unconditional love. That's what I had never experienced, and I had never experienced love up until the point when I went through this program. I need something to drink, if possible, like a glass of water. But that was a big deal for me. And I know I'm jumping around, but I had never experienced love, or at least in the way that I did after I went through the program, because the most I could ever hope for was relief that you bought what I was selling. It wasn't me that you were loving. I could recognize somebody trying to love me. I could act like I could show the same thing back and do all that. But I didn't get to experience it because I was just trying to be whoever you wanted me to be. So when you loved me, I was like, phew, all right, they bought it. They got it. But it wasn't me. Once I finally went through the program and was okay with being me, regardless of whoever I was with, I actually got to experience the fact that people did love me. I wasn't sure they would. I was pretty convinced that nobody would want to at that point. And it was such a surprise and so overwhelming because I had been surrounded by it the whole time. Everybody that was in my life loved me, and I was odd. I liked my step-parents. I liked my step-brothers and sisters. I like my mother-in-law. I like all the people that a lot of people complain about. I like all of them. I got great ones, and they all loved the shit out of me. And I finally got to experience it when I was able to be me with them. And sorry. So that was a big deal for me. And I was able to love them back. And the unconditional love, which I do believe that is the whole point. I believe that's what Jesus came to teach us, was how to serve other people without expectation and unconditionally love people. I'm not capable of that without God's help. If I love somebody without God's help, I'm going to expect something. I'm going to expect you to love me back. I'm going to expect you to say thank you. I'm going to expect something. I just can't help it. I'm sorry. Maybe it's just me. The only time I can ever share unconditional love with somebody else is when I get it from God. And that's what happens every morning for me. I don't have to try to love me. I don't have to try to love you. I don't have to try to do any of that. I have to accept that God loves me unconditionally and allow him to give it to me. And then when I can walk around with it and I can share it with other people, then it can be unconditional love. If it comes from me, generated by me, it's not unconditional love. I'm going to expect something. I can do that when I get it from God, because he does love me unconditionally. And that's the whole point, is I have to get the things that are worth sharing with other people from him. Otherwise, it's going to end in something that isn't as good as it could have been, because I'm going to need something back or want something back, and people are not perfect. I'm not going to get it. And then that's going to be, that starts the cycle all over again. When I share God's love with other people, it don't matter whether I get anything back. I don't even remember that I did it. And I do believe that's how it works. And I do believe when I share it with somebody else, that's how I show God that I'm grateful for it. It's just a triangle. He gives it to me. If I'm grateful, and gratitude is defined as being ready and willing to do something to return an act of kindness, gratitude requires action. And look, it's the most powerful emotion, I think, scientifically or spiritually, for a person to have, is gratitude. But true gratitude isn't a list. It isn't something I think or thought. It's being ready or willing to repay a kindness that somebody's shown me. And the only way I can repay unconditional love is by giving it to somebody else. And I believe that's how it makes its way back to God, is when that happens. That's the only way I can be grateful, is by doing that. So that's something else that I've understood from this program. There's a million things, and look, God tries to tell me more every day as long as I'll listen. But I'm trying to think if I'm skipping. I mean, there's a million different things. I can talk to y'all all day. But what I will say, and I got time, but we can do questions too. I'm even better at doing that. But there is a story that I heard that pretty much sums up my experience with all of this. And I believe this is how it works with my relationship with God, and whether regardless of alcohol or not. But here's the story, and then I'll wrap up with this, and y'all can ask if there's anything y'all have questions about. But there's a drunk that's walking down the street, and he's rough, man. He's missing his shoes, hair's on fire. He's just walking down the street, and he looks up and he sees God. And God's standing there, and God's holding something. And the drunk looked up and said, "What you got?" He's like, "This is sobriety. Call it peace, call it whatever you want, solution." And the drunk says, "I want that." He's desperate. He's at that point I was at. And God says, "Okay, what do you have?" And the guy says, "I got $50. And God says, "All right, sobriety costs $50. And the drunk, being a drunk, says, whoa, hold on. If I give you my $50, I won't have any money, and I couldn't put any gas in my car to get home." And God says, "That's right, you got a car." He's like, "Sobriety's going to cost you $50 in your car." And the drunk says, "Well, if I give you my car, how am I going to get to work?" And God says, "That's right, you got a job too. Yes, sobriety's going to cost you $50, your car, and your job." And he said, "Well, if I give you all that, and if I give you my job, how am I going to pay for my house?" And God's like, "That's right, you got a house." He's like, "We got to update these records." He's like, You got a house. Yep, sobriety's going to cost you your house. And the guy said, well, if I don't have a house, where's my family going to live? And God's like, that's right. You got a family, don't you? It's like, it's going to cost you your family too. Well, it's like, if I don't have a job, a house, a car, and a family, he's like, what kind of life is that? He's like, that's right. You got a life. It's going to cost you your life. And the drunk was at the point that I was at, and of desperation, where he said, sure, fine. I'm going to give you my money, my car, my job, my house, my family, and my life. And God gave him sobriety. And then God looked at him and said, you know what? I'm going to give you your $50 back. But it ain't your $50. It's mine. But I'm going to let you spend it for me. I'm going to give you your car back. It's not yours. It's mine. And hopefully you don't mind if it gets a little dirty, because I'm going to need you to use it to help other people. Maybe a drunk in there that throws up one day. So he's like, I'm going to give you your car back, but it's not yours, but I'm going to let you drive it. He said, I'm going to give you your house back. Not your house, but I'm going to let you live in it. I'm going to give you your family back, and they got every right not to take you back, but I'm going to give them back to you. But it's not your family. It's mine. But I'm going to let them take care of you. I said, I'm going to let you take care of them. And he said, I'm going to give you your life back. But it's not your life anymore. I'm going to give you your job back. It's not your job anymore. You can be somebody that, like me, to other people and be useful, and you can live it for me. And I do believe, and at least that's my experience, on the deal that God cuts with me and look, everybody else. I tried to give him a little bit. I tried to say, take this. I tried to say, yeah, no, I don't want to drink anymore. I can't control it. Can you take that? And it didn't work for 2 years in AA, because that wasn't the deal. The person I was had to drink. I had to become somebody who didn't have to drink. I wanted to stay the same person and just not drink anymore, because I thought I had everything else figured out. And it took me 2 years and a lot of pain and agony to find out that wasn't the case. I didn't drink. I drank because of who I was. And I couldn't stop because of who I was. So if I wanted to get to the point where I didn't need to drink anymore, I had to become somebody else. I had to become somebody new. I had to allow God to take over all of it. And once he did, and once I did, like I said, this isn't stuff that I think happened. I tried for 2 years the other way. And then from the day that I gave up and said, I ain't got no more ideas. I've checked every box in the big book. If it says don't do it, I've done it. If it says do it, I've tried to do it. As long as it was my plan, it wasn't going to work. Because God wants us to help each other, and that requires two sides. And I do believe that's what I'm here for. And I have to participate in both, which is I have to be willing to help other people, but the biggest one I struggle with is allowing other people to help me. I could have came up with the best plan for getting sober in the world, and it wouldn't have worked as long as it was my plan. Because God said, you got to go find somebody else and let them help you. And then I have to turn around and help somebody else. And I do believe that, I asked God, I want to do God's will, the third step, do God's will. What's God's will? For me, it can get as complicated or simple as you want, but for me, it's to be loved and to love other people. That's God's will for me. And I can't do one without the other. I have to do both. I have to be willing to help, and I have to accept help. And I go just to as many bad places for one lacking than the other. If I don't allow other people to help me, I think I'll get there faster than if I didn't try to love other people. I don't know. It requires both. So if I'm going somewhere today, or if I'm going to do something, or if I got to be here, or if I got to go to wherever my wife tells me I got to go on the weekend, that's the deal. I got to go there for one of those reasons. Because if I start going places and one of those reasons isn't there, I'll end up drunk again. I will. But I don't have to. God allows me to not have to fight against that anymore. I don't have to. It's a miracle. I don't completely understand it even now, but I do know that it works once you finally do it. I did it the wrong way for a long time, and then finally accepted it and let it happen, and haven't wanted to drink since. I've been around it. I was at Mardi Gras, have been every year, but I'm there to be useful. Which there's a lot of people that need somebody around that's not drunk at Mardi Gras, and I had a great time. So I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that I could have told y'all I left out, but who's got questions? Anybody?
Listening to, I think this just hit me for the first time. Listening to what you were saying about, 4-step, doing a moral inventory, searching moral inventory, fearless.
Fearless moral inventory, which essentially moral, they're referring to truth. It doesn't actually mean the bad things you did. It's what's true, which is a new concept for most of us at that point.
Yeah, fearless searching moral inventory. And the step before that is
Made a decision. Yep.
So if you've really turned your life and your will over to
4 steps easy.
then if you didn't, how can you do a fearless?
So the check you can't, and we'd have done it already.
Right.
I'd have, but we can't. It's too much. It's too scary, and the check, and that's the easy check for if you've completed a step in a 12-step program is the next step. If in other words, if I've got a sponsee or somebody says I'm having trouble with the 4th step, I'm like, you didn't do the 3rd step. If you're having trouble with the 5th step, you didn't do the 4th step. If you're having trouble with the 9th step, you didn't do the 8th step. And that's just my experience. I did those 2 years, I'd gotten to the 3rd step. I never got to the 4th step. And the reason is because I checked the step before, the 1st step. I had never done it completely. But there's always got to be, for me, it's required that I make progress. And look, the program works like that for me as well, is I can't stop. It doesn't mean I have to complete it in 12 days. It means that when I finish the 3rd step, 4 has always come right after 3 as long as I've been alive. So it doesn't come 2 years later or a year later. It's literally right after 4. The next step. So I used to think AA and 12 steps were like an elevator. Okay, I thought that's how it worked. I'd get on and I could go up to step 3 and I can get off the elevator and I can hang out. And then when I decide to go to step 4, I can get back on the elevator and go up. But I don't think AA or life works like that. For me, AA and life both works like walking the wrong way up an escalator. As long as I'm taking steps, I'll keep going up. But if I stop, eventually I'm going to end up at the bottom. And that's how my experience has worked on the program and just life in general. I have to continue to progress. I have to ask God to help me make progress, ask for new understanding, try to go talk to people, go listen, try to help somebody. Most of the progress at this point in my life is I get from helping other people. And maybe that's how it's always been, but it seems obvious. If I'm not, all the things I do that help me understand stuff or get better, all is because of helping somebody else. That's why I love being asked to speak or do something like this, because I make more progress when that happens than I do. I go on retreats, and twice a year we have an Emmaus retreat at St. Dominic's that I go back and help on. I make as much spiritual progress in the week leading up to that retreat as I do any other time, because I can't give away something I don't have. So if I want to help somebody, I got to go get something worth giving. And the only thing I get worth giving at this point, I feel like, is it comes from God. So if I've got peace or happiness or some joy in my life, then I can give that away. If I'm scared all the time and depressed and anxious and anxiety and worried about everything, and look, we don't get a choice. That's the other thing I figured out in AA. They always act like you get to pick. Or like, well, there may be something else if you choose. No, you either do or you don't. Like, you always have to make a decision, and not making one's the same. I don't get to choose not to give away my fear. I don't get to choose not to give away my anxiety and my worry and everything else. We can't help it. We're going to give away whatever we've got. And I don't want to give that to my kids. I don't want to give that to my wife. I don't want to give it to my family and the people I'm around. So I don't get to not do that. It's going to be given away regardless. So the only choice I get is to what I have, what I've got to give away. And the only place I go to get anything worth giving is in prayer and with God. And the rest of my life is exchanging it with other folks, which is scary for me too, because I used to be scared of everybody. I don't care if you were 2 or you were 80. And as soon as I walk into a room, I'm scared to death what you're going to think about me. And I'm not like that anymore. Yes.
I was just wondering, I was thinking, had you not been picked up and moved every 5 years, would this have put you on this path because you were always searching for an identity with people that were new to you again? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
You move, and then you're struggling to have an identity with the new people that you come across that you haven't been around.
So the way I think, and this would be kind of an answer, I guess. I'm grateful that the thing I picked to deal with my thoughts and emotions was going to kill me, so that I had to figure this out sooner, because I believe everybody has to figure the same thing out. I just had to do it earlier because I was going to die. So I believe that whether there was something like, whether that completely got me to that point to where I needed a solution right away, or whether it didn't happen and I lived to be an 80-year-old man yelling at kids to get off my lawn because I'm angry and full of fear, and then finally had to figure it out. Yeah, I believe we all have to do that at some point. So I'm grateful that I had to do it before I turned 40, so that I can spend the next 40 years trying to live that way or whatever. But yeah, I do believe at some point we all have to find something to deal with our thoughts and emotions. I just happened to pick one that was going to kill me if I didn't stop it. So I had to go through this, and I had to find the final infinite solution. There's only one infinite solution to that problem for me, and it's God, because He's the only one that's with me wherever I go, wherever I'm at. Otherwise, I can't take everything with me. Some people it's the beach or I like being outdoors. I love all that. It helps me be more peaceful than a crowd. I don't like crowds, but I can't take my camp with me wherever I go. I can't move. God goes with me wherever I'm at. But speaking of outdoors, I do get way more peace in nature, and I find that a lot of people do. But I have to explain stuff to myself, and my explanation to me about why I love being outdoors and in the woods and nature and all that helps me with AA, because my explanation to myself is the reason it's easy to find peace there is because everything's doing what God intended. And when I'm surrounded by things that's why I think I get peace at church or AA meetings or things like that. Whenever you're surrounded by things or beings that are doing what God intended, peace is kind of like a natural result. And that's what happens when I'm in nature. They don't have a choice. Humans, we have a choice to do what God intended or not to. And when we choose to do what God intended, we get peace. And that's like church, like things like this, AA groups, you can feel it. Because people are doing what God intended, which is trying to help each other and allowing other people to help them. And I do believe that's what God intended. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it absolutely made me exacerbated, I guess, my fear of being accepted and what other people thought about me. Because I didn't have to, I chose to, but to be whatever that was. I was really good at making friends and fitting in new places, which could be a great plus, but it made it super duper important to me, and it stuck with me, and I had never found a different solution. Some people would probably find a different solution than alcohol to that problem. I didn't.
I think we all search for our identity. Who am I? Who am I as a person? Who am I to God? And then who is God to me? And we don't always ask those questions, but then when we get clarity of mind, that those things come up. When when we are searching for that which gives us peace, and we can't find it in any of the created things, then we have to maybe go back to the Creator, who created those things, and He's the fit. And like the story, your life story, your mess became a message. That's what God does. He takes messes and makes messages out of them. Your experience, and I'm going to ask you, which may be an obvious answer to the question I'm going to ask. It's like, would you be in, because of what you've gone through, the good, the bad, the ugly, would you be in the relationship with God that you are now if you had not gone through?
No.
Brought you to that point to seek Him out?
No, not at all. Not at this point in my life, or it definitely wouldn't have happened as soon. Like I said, I think we all get that choice eventually, and it all gets put in front of us. Some of us at different times in our lives, depending on what we have to deal with. Some people have to deal with that way earlier than I did. Somebody loses a parent or a kid, or look, there's other things that can get me there, but it requires acceptance of the fact that I can't do it on my own. I mean, that's the first two things we ask somebody who comes in that 12-step program is, do you want to stop? And generally we'll get a yes, not always. And the second one is, can you do it by yourself? And if you answer, I want to stop and I can't do it by myself, you qualify, I'll help you. You answer either one of those the other way, and I got other things to do. But yeah, it's a good point. And look, early on in sobriety and with the issue of me and my insecurity and stuff, one of my, what I call my walk-around prayers, and they change from now and then, but a walk-around prayer for me that helped me a ton was, God, thank you for the knowledge that I'm who, what, and where I'm supposed to be right now. And I ask for you to help me feel, see, hear, and say whatever you need me to do moving forward. Because I find that that's the truth. I don't care what we've done or where we're at or how far down we're going. I do believe that at whatever point that is, I'm exactly who, what, where, and God intends me to be. In each moment of my entire life, I have the decision to make to either allow Him to guide me from that point on or to continue to do what I want to do. And as long as I continue to do that, there's a conflict. And look, as my dad said this before, and I get a lot of what I am from him, but AA essentially gets us out of conflict with God, myself, and other people. Before I went through the program, I was in conflict with God. I was in conflict with myself. I didn't like myself. I was ashamed. I was guilty. It didn't matter. You can't really shame an addict or an alcoholic any more than they've already done themselves. So it's like a drop in an ocean. So I was absolutely in conflict, and I was in conflict with everybody else I was in a relationship with because I was lying or being dishonest, or they didn't even know who I was. And the first 3 steps got me out of conflict with God. The next 3 steps got me out of conflict with myself. And then the next 3 steps got me out of conflict with other people. And then I could use the last 3 steps to stay that way. But that's it, man. And it's so beautiful. I'm not in conflict with anybody anymore, except my wife's like the only person left that can make me mad. And I'm serious. And it's not her fault. It's not her fault. It's always been that way for me. It's always been the hardest to let go of. The more I care about you, the more scared I am of you. And I made her laugh when I'd tell her that. I was like, can you imagine sleeping next to the one thing in the world you're more scared of than anything else in the world every night? I said, that'd drive you crazy. She got a kick out of that. But yeah, it's gone now. And like I said, it doesn't, and look, I say it doesn't. As long as I'm in the right place in conscious contact with God and I'm seeking, all that stuff isn't a problem for me anymore. As soon as I stop, it is.
You got 5 years now, a little over 5 years.
Yeah.
How often you go to meetings?
Let's see. Probably once, twice a week. But for me, there's multiple parts. Like, so I'm on the board of the Alano Club, so we meet to help keep that facility, running for those meetings. I'm involved in the Emmaus group at St. Dominic's, and we put on 2 retreats a year for people to, and the whole point of that is for people to be able to spend 3 days, and we put them through different experiences to help them strengthen or start a relationship with God and Jesus. So for me, I still got to go to meetings. Well, let me rephrase that. I don't need to go to a meeting to stay sober at this point. It's kind of a catch-22. I do need to use what I've been given to help other people. And for an alcoholic, I'm uniquely gifted with an experience that can help somebody else. Because I do believe that's the other thing, is AA's taught me the proper use of experience, which I do believe is the only thing I actually have. The only thing so back to my favorite question, and was even before I got sober, was what are you doing with what you've been given? And again, my brain, I got to break that down. What I've been given, I had to figure that out. It's everything. Everything I have, everything I do was either given to me directly or made available to me based on what somebody else did. I don't care if I earned something or not. If I think, my job, if somebody else didn't start that company and do whatever, I wouldn't, whether I deserve it or don't deserve it, I don't know. But it's everything. But really what I've been given is the opportunity to experience life. My time and what I choose to focus on creates experiences. And what am I doing with my experiences? Okay. My default, like with my kid, is like, my experience says that if you jump on the bed, you're gonna fall off and hit your head. Okay, so hey, don't jump on the bed. You're gonna hit your head. And then they do it, and so my big brain says, okay, I've used my experience. I told them not to do it, and I'm gonna say I told you so. When the proper use of experience, maybe to warn people or whatever, but the proper use of experience and the valuable experience that I have is how to get through the pain you're dealing with and grow faster and farther than I did. So if I take something I've been through, sure, I'll warn somebody, you may not want to do that, whatever. But the most valuable use of experience is after they still do the thing that you told them not to do, and you've got the experience dealing with the pain and the learning curve of after that. And if I can take what I'd learned, and it took me a year or 2 years or whatever it did to get over that to where I could and I can use that to help them in 2 weeks get through that to where they go further faster than I did, and then they can do the next. That's how we compound everything. So experiences, I think we all, and I used to apply them incorrectly, which is before the pain. And experiences are most valuable after the pain. And I do believe that's how everybody gets over things. I don't think until we're willing to use our experiences to help other people that we truly get peace. And people go through terrible stuff. But every foundation, every charitable organization is a response to somebody going through a terrible tragedy, and then finally getting to that point where they figured out, well, the only way I get peace is when I use my experiences to help somebody else. And then God takes it and makes it good. So everything can be good. I used to hate the saying that there's a reason for everything. I hated that. And I'm still not a huge fan of it, but I changed it because I'm an alcoholic and I get to do what I want and be a rebel. I do believe there's a reason for everything. And the best part is God gives us the opportunity to choose what it is. But it requires that choice. So if I don't make a choice and something terrible happens to me and I let it be, then there is no reason, or the reason was to make me feel like a piece of crap and take something away from me. Or I get to choose the reason being that now I can go help this person who's going through that, or this person, or these millions of people that some people have ended up helping based on something terrible that happened to them. Everything happens for a reason, and those people chose the reason that benefited other people, and they received peace at that point. They were able to look. We don't move past everything. We remember things, and we shouldn't forget them, because then they're not useful to anybody else. But it allows us to have some peace when we choose the reason for something happening to us is for the benefit of somebody else. So. I think she attended a couple of meetings, but no. She probably had quite a few conversations with my dad, who's qualified. Yeah. Prayer, God. She got a big heart, and
Did she have any counseling?
she did. She saw it. Yeah. Like I said, everybody in my family is awesome. And like I said, my dad's been involved with helping family members and sponsees and everything for a long time, and they were able to develop a relationship where they could talk about it. She has a great relationship with her mom, and she's got 4 aunts, and yes, they went to a few meetings, but she never got completely involved in Al-Anon or any kind of long-term therapy with a therapist. Not saying it wouldn't have helped or it would have, I don't know.
Jake, the only thing I would say about that is Lisa is the master of living in the moment. And so she's not worried about those moments from 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Just gratitude for what she has now. I mean, it's like it's just an amazing attribute that not worrying about it.
No, she's got a big old heart, and I envy my wife. She's got, like, she has 5 different dinner club groups that she goes to. Everybody she meets becomes a friend, and then there's groups of this. Like, I don't know how she knows so many people, but everybody loves her. That's why I know when I piss her off, it's my fault, because everybody else seems to like her.
Nosy question. Just because you mentioned St. Dominic's, did you convert to Catholicism?
No. They still let me come over there though. So, huh?
You know Mick Hartenstein?
I don't know.
He was running an NA group over there, and I think he might have been doing an R&I group as well.
I know they have
He
the.
started at St. Dominic years ago.
Okay.
It kind of dwindled down, and I asked him why. He says, you know what the problem is? I know. I said, what? He says, we're too affluent. People want to be seen there. Wow.
Yeah, and look, that happens sometimes. And look, there's good reasons for everything. I mean, there are some professions, they have groups just for doctors. They have groups just for lawyers. Look, and I get it. I don't really hide it from anybody, and I don't necessarily ever intend to. I also don't go shout from the top of my car when I pull up, I'm an alcoholic or anything like that. But there are situations where I understand.
God puts the situation in front of you,
Yeah.
It's not a
Then what
coincidence.
I've learned about my son's 11 and a half years clean off of heroin that started at LSU.
Awesome.
He went to Jesuit. Anyway, when I put him in rehab in Hattiesburg, the one thing that I never forget is this yellow sticker that was on the wall, and it said, "Secrets keep me sick."
Yep.
And my ex-husband, who's still, he's still in and out, and his whole family is like, you can't, shh, don't say this, don't say, and I honestly believe that's things, secrets keep me sick.
Oh yeah. Yes, they do. And for me, the main reason is you're hiding experiences that might benefit somebody else, and you don't get peace or recovery until you're willing. Again, that was one of my biggest hopes right when I came in. I saw people sharing stuff that was similar to what I did, that I would, look, if I did something stupid, I'm not telling you unless you got it on video. Like, was the way I used to feel. Like, I got to hide that. You might not like me anymore, or you might not say that, or that's going to affect who I want you to think I am.
Because there's no, I haven't ever come across anybody that hasn't had an issue with someone in their family. So why it has to be so hush hush, secret, you know,
Reality usually doesn't play into it. What's real doesn't really isn't part of the deal before you get through that program. At least for me, it's all about perception. And
I don't know how you bottle it up inside of those many years. Like, if you just like admit it and not bottle it up, then it's gotta be like a burst of relief, right?
it is.
You've been coming here for years. This has been kind of your treatment, so you've been helped through understanding and support. They haven't got any treatment, so they're still sick.
Yeah, that helped me be patient with my wife. That's, I got to sponsor meetings, books, and hours and hours every week of help. And I get frustrated at her about something or whatever, and until I remember she doesn't have all the like. It took all of this for me to act like a lot of other people act on a regular basis. And back to that thing, if somebody's acting crazy, well, it's probably my fault. So, I put her through a lot, so I kind of expect her to be a little nutty on a few things. And she, like I said, she doesn't get all the help and therapy or whatever you want to call it that I get. So, she's come a long way too, and she started out way ahead of me. So, I'm still trying to catch up to what she does naturally, which is, like my dad said, live in the moment and actually be curious and want to hear about what other people got going on and and everything else. So she teaches me a bunch.
Story, just of complete surrender, so inspirational, and you presented it so beautifully. But it just seems to me like you just turn to God every day and be with Him, and you let Him fill you, and then you go and live life giving what God has given you. Unconditional love and the peace, because you were given it, you accepted it.
Yeah.
And so, beautiful story.
We just heard about going to the well of living water, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So keep letting Him fill us with that living water. We won't go empty, and we have something to pour out for other people.
Yeah.
I was thinking, as you were talking about, giving back to other people. You were at one point living in darkness, so to speak, and somebody at some point, handed you a candle. Now the way I look at it, the candle is Jesus. Okay, He's the light. He's the light that comes into our darkness in the world. And other people are His figures moving around in the darkness in the corners and all. And we have a light. Now, sometimes in our mind, well, I can't give this away because I'm gonna lose it. But the thing about a candle is, if you go light somebody else's candle, it does not diminish your light. Now candles are self-consuming, so it does weigh on us, but we can pass that light on, that torch of faith on to other people by our experiences, by our faith, not just with words, by our actions.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, part of how I view this whole deal is like in St. Francis's prayer, make me a conduit or an instrument of your peace. If you want something, don't try to go get it. Allow yourself to be the conduit, and guess what? If love's running through, if I'm a conduit and love's running through me to you, guess what I got? I got love. If I'm able to give hope to somebody else or carry it, it doesn't come. It doesn't come and stay. It's supposed to flow through me to the next person and the next person, the next person. But guess what? Whatever's flowing through me, I've still got. I get the benefit of it. And if I stop, it goes away. I have to give it away. If I want anything else, if I want more, if I want to experience it or keep experiencing it. So, yeah, you, me, and God, that's all we got.
God plus one is a majority.
That's it. Yep, that's what he expects, I think. That's his will. What else? Anybody else got a question or anything else?
Do you get frustrated about someone that you try to reach, maybe a friend that is still doing and drinking, and you feel like, okay, let me see him because it's a good friend. Are you trying to, but you find that it's still in his mind about drinking, and he even more or less force you to drink with him.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I do until I pray, and I don't. I guess is the simple answer. The frustration for me usually comes from I'm trying to help. I want you to get better. This would be good for you. I think, I do. And as soon as I start praying, that all goes away, and it's well, what can I do to help somebody? And I've had conversations with other people that are in that situation, and my simplest answer for them is the problem they're dealing with. Do you have any experience with it personally? And if the answer is no, then the only thing you can do to help somebody that is dealing with something that you have zero experience on is to help them find somebody else that has had experience on it, and then they can help. And that's why I think, like, back to my thing with experience. That's the only thing I got to offer. It goes both ways. If somebody's dealing with something I got no experience on, that's not my calling. That's the best I can do is, hey, I know somebody that has dealt with that. Here's their phone number. If you get desperate enough, call them. Now, if I do, then it is absolutely back to what I said. If I want to continue to have peace, then yeah, look, this is what happened to me. The only thing I have to share is experience, not opinions, not thoughts, not something I read in a book. Not the most powerful thing I've got to offer anybody is my experience on something. If I've got it. If I don't, then the next best thing is I know somebody that does, and this is what you should call them. So, yes, I do not get frustrated with that anymore, because I have experience with it. I understand. Ain't nobody could get. It didn't matter what anybody told me. It didn't know how much love anybody wanted to show me. Like I said, I didn't even experience love till after I went to the program. So people could have loved me, and they did, apparently. And I was surrounded by love. It didn't matter. You couldn't love me in the sobriety. I literally grew up with AA principles. I knew as much about the big book and everything else as you'd want to know. It was actually going to AA meetings and still couldn't get sober. You can't. This is something that just, you can be available if you've got experience and offer it and share your experience, or you love them until and you can hand them off to somebody that does. But like I said, I'm not capable of that on my own. That's why I said until I pray about it. I can love anything for as long as I need to, as long as I'm praying and it's coming from God. But if I've got experience, God will remind me when I'm praying that you should go help them. I don't have anything against it. I don't pray for people. Not because I don't love them and I don't like them. It's because if I did, my personality would be, that's good enough. I wouldn't have anything to do. The only way I pray for other people is pray for the willingness, if there's something I can do to help them, that I do that. Because that's where I would fall short. And look, there's nothing wrong with praying with people. I'm saying for me, I would sit down every day and pray for a bunch of people, and that would be it if I did do that, because I'd be like, check. Go ahead, God, go get them. So I have to pray for the willingness to help the people that he puts in front of me, and that allows me to do what I'm supposed to do. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but anybody else? Nothing? All right. Thank y'all. Thank God. That's why I prayed beforehand. That way, if I screwed it up, y'all couldn't blame me. It was on God.